Hey, welcome back. Last weekend, I played a chess tournament in Summerside, PEI, which is about a 4-hour drive or so from where I live. And it was called the Maritime Chess Festival. There were actually several different tournaments going on that weekend. There was the Maritime Open, which was the big sort of main event, the classical tournament, which I played. It was 6 rounds. And there were a few different like rapid tournaments and a blitz tournament and so on. I didn't take part in very many of those. I did play one rapid tournament, which was the night before the classical, because that one fit in pretty well. But yeah, it was a pretty nice event. There were about 100 players. It was a 4-day event, and the open tournament, the Maritime Open, the classical tournament, had sort of 2 different sections. The championship section, which was CFC rated but also FIDE rated, and then the challenger section. And I took part in the challenger section, which were just somewhat lower rated players. Seemed a little closer to my level. And yeah, it was a great tournament. I really enjoyed it. And let's dive into round 1. So in round 1, I played with the black pieces against a somewhat lower rated opponent, but that always, like, I don't know. I think I'm learning more and more to pretty much just ignore the rating from my opponent, because, like, I don't know, the lower rated opponents, some of them are like underrated and just haven't played a lot of tournaments yet, and some of the higher rated opponents, like, maybe they're high rated but maybe they haven't been playing as much lately. Like it really depends. But anyway, a 1200-ish rated opponent, and they played e4 and I played c6. I played the Caro-Kann as black for every game that I played black in this tournament. I usually play the King's Indian if anything other than e4 is played, like if d4 is played or c4 or something like this. But all of my opponents played e4 as white, so I just stuck with the Caro-Kann, stuck with what I know. So pretty normal opening. Advanced Caro-Kann, I like to play this c5 variation. Knight f3, knight c6. Both bishops come out, pinning the knights. Castles, e6, which I like to play after bringing the light squared bishop out. And then knight c3. So pretty standard up to this point. Knight c3 is a little bit of a strange move. Often something would be done like maybe h3 to kick my bishop, or c3 to protect this pawn. But they played knight c3 instead. I brought this knight out, and this is a common idea. This knight is wanting to go to either g6 or f5. One potential danger here is that my c pawn can be taken because this knight blocks the defense of the pawn from the bishop. But in general, if this happens, then this knight can go here, and now I'm actually attacking both pawns, and I'm almost certainly going to win the pawn back. So if this knight were on f6, then this bishop move makes a lot of sense because it pins the knight, and if my queen ever moves, then the knight here can be captured, and the only way to recapture is with this pawn. But in this case, it doesn't make as much sense because if my queen moves away and the knight is taken, then it just helps me to develop my bishop. So I didn't think that this move, this bishop g5 move was the best by white, but it's certainly not a terrible move. Now I played queen b6, and I labeled this as an inaccuracy because the problem is now this pawn can be captured with a tempo on my queen, and my queen is actually almost a little bit close to being trapped. Like not entirely, but you'll see how it goes. My opponent did indeed capture here, and I felt like the best move was just to take back with the queen. But then I was a little bit worried. I guess I should mention that, like, there's also just the possibility of not taking this pawn back and going back to an idea like this, where I might take this with the bishop, or this one with the knight. But I just didn't really like this setup. I felt like it just gave white sort of too much space on the queen side, and it feels a little bit passive. So I took back with my queen, and they played this bishop move, which I was expecting And I had calculated that it looks a little bit scary because it looks like my queen doesn't have a lot of squares. Like my queen can't go there either because of this bishop. But I figured that my queen can go here. And then if a3, then my queen can go to a5. And now I have some escape squares for the queen. But before my opponent played this, and after I played this queen move, I was thinking, wait a minute, what if they play e3? Spoiler alert, I had some arrows there already. What if they play a3 immediately? Because now, doesn't bishop e3 just simply trap the queen? I can't go anywhere. And that's true, but there are a few solutions. If they had played a3, then one thing I could do is actually just move this knight out of the way. And then if the bishop comes up here, then the queen can just go to the e7 square where the knight was. Or after they play e3, I could just simply slide my queen back. And now this doesn't trap the queen because the queen can go here or d8 or whatever. So the queen wasn't as close to being trapped as I thought. But, when you're in the middle of a tournament game and you can't actually evaluate all of these lines, sometimes it's a little bit scary when you think there may be a line to trap the queen. Anyway, they played bishop e3. I put the queen on b4, which is nice because it puts pressure on that pawn. And then after rook b1, defending that pawn, I decided I don't need to worry about a3 right now because I always have time to escape. So I'll just continue with my plan of putting my knight on f5. And as a bonus, it now actually hits that bishop, which could be nice, especially if I damage the pawn structure. And so I did that. Finally, white plays a3, and I move my queen back. And then I believe what was happening is my opponent wanted to defend this bishop in a way that they didn't have to capture with the pawn, which makes a lot of sense. But to do that, they moved their queen to c1. And the problem is this takes the queen's eye off of this knight, and now I can capture and damage their pawn structure. So now it's looking really good for black already. And then I just decided, all right, I want to develop. I want to get castled, sort of consolidate. I'm a little bit worried about this semi-open G file. If they move the king to H1 and then the rook over, then I can potentially get attacked on the king side. But that's not the reason why this was a mistake, actually. I missed a tactic. In this position, now that this knight is gone, I can actually push right here and fork the bishop and knight. And this is defended by this knight. Not really by this knight because this knight is still pinned. It has been pretty much all game. And I missed that. However, after I moved this bishop, then I actually saw that this was possible. And I was like, oh no, I missed a winning tactic. I can't believe it. But then my opponent missed it too. They went with the king h1 move to bring the rook over, and so now I played d4, which was the best move. So now they did sort of an intermediary move there, hitting the queen. I moved back, targeting this pawn as well as a bonus, and then they moved their knight here. I believe a better move, according to the engine, would have actually been to move the knight here instead, because then at least it damages my pawn structure and forces me to take the knight instead of the bishop, which is probably better for white. But they were looking at going here and then eventually going here, which seems like an okay outpost for the knight, but it doesn't last very long in reality. So I capture the bishop. Now I'm up material. I also grab this pawn. And then once they put their knight there, I decide, well, I'm going to trade off my bishop for it because I'm up material. I want to trade down and simplify to an endgame. And not only that, it means I win another pawn. So now I'm up pretty significant material, should be able to convert this game pretty easily. After e4, I moved the knight up to d4, which was okay, but what I missed is that they could move their queen here, and then this pin is actually pretty annoying. And it's especially annoying because of this pin as well. So this knight can't actually, isn't actually defending. Like they could push c3 and hit this knight there. It's actually pretty annoying. So I actually had a pretty long think on this move and was thinking of all kinds of different options. And in the end, I ended up just castling long. And The reason is, so it's interesting that we're on move 22 and I still haven't castled yet, and partly just because there's been stuff going on in the middle of the board. Maybe I should have castled earlier before I launched any tactics or whatever, but there wasn't really an opportunity. And as I mentioned, this knight has been pinned pretty much the whole game because I haven't been castled. And so I figured, all right, let's castle here. Either direction that I castle, there are some open files or semi-open files that white can potentially use to attack, so I need to be a little bit careful. But at least this way, the rook now defends this knight, which is really nice, so I don't have to worry about any issues there anymore. And then I just feel like, I can put my queen somewhere. I can maybe start a pawn storm on this side of the board, try to cause problems for the king, try to wrap my queen around perhaps, and now this knight is quite a bit more safe. I suppose technically there's still this move, which I'm not entirely sure. I guess no, the bishop is not hanging. Interesting. Let me just take a look at the engine here. If white plays this, then knight b3. Knight b3. Really interesting. So that defends the queen. And then if rook takes, rook can't take because the queen is hanging. Oh, okay. So they have to either move their queen or capture, and then my knight is okay. So interesting. That's kind of an interesting line. So instead, what they did is they moved the rook here, and this was a blunder that loses the game pretty much on the spot, because it looks like I can't capture with the knight because it's pinned. However, once the knight is on b3, then as we just saw, it defends the queen. And so I captured, they traded queens, and then white resigned in this position, actually, because now they're down 9 points of material, and the game should not be hard for black to win. So it was a good game, lower rated opponent, but they played for the most part pretty well. They had some inaccuracies and then some bigger mistakes near the end. But anyway, it was nice to start off the tournament with a win. There were some complications in this game, but I feel like I was never really in trouble. So that was round one. Round two is coming very soon. Stay tuned, and we'll see you next time.